Casey Thompson, of course, hitting the transfer portal. I think there was always a possibility of this. We kind of talked about that. Nebraska. I mean, if you're at a place in a position where you've got two guys that could start, I mean, we just kind of all admitted and thought about it. These are two guys that have started, not just Casey at Nebraska, but at Texas, at Georgia Tech. And they make those moves. You're looking for playing time. It's a competitive position. You want to make the most out of your college years, and ultimately, Casey Thompson looks like, I mean, if we're reading the tea leaves, especially with Casey Thompson leaving now, looks like he's not a perfect fit for this offense. I mean, the three remaining quarterbacks now all have the kind of the mobile part to their game. It's a hit. It's a hit for Nebraska. I mean, I know we can try to make ourselves feel a little bit better. But this is a guy that could have competed for the starting job, probably will be starting elsewhere. And one way or the other, I thought it was going to be not necessarily a miracle worker, but pretty darn close to it in this day and age. If Nebraska was able to keep both of those guys going into next year, because I mean it's hard to establish quarterback depth. We've seen that at Nebraska for for a long time now, 15 years, maybe even longer. And there's a reason for that in college football these days, especially now with the transfer portal. The graduate transfer opportunity there for Casey. So I guess this was somewhat expected. The thing that surprises me a little bit about it is Casey Thompson and Logan Smothers both waiting, not being able to play, not be able to showcase their talents, waiting until after spring ball to make the decision. But that's just kind of how the cookie crumbles. By the way, Logan Smothers did somewhat leave it open that he might return to Nebraska. And now I think if you're Nebraska, you've got to consider that. Considering your backup options right now, I think Logan might be your best one if you're able to retain him as far as who can play today. He's hurt, but I mean, who can play this year?
Did you watch the same games I watched last year when him and Purdy was in there?
Yeah.
They can't throw. First of all,
right.
Jeff Sims, a below average passer. So I hate to say this, but I'm a Casey Thompson guy because he's a great athlete that can throw the ball. And if he chooses to run, he can run. Now, I'm not going to fault Matt Rule for this because this is his football team. But I got my opinion, and I think this is the baddest thing that probably happened to Nebraska in the last 2 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, man. We got – I mean, Jeff Sims is not really proven to me. You know what I'm saying? He played at Georgia Tech, first of all. I'm not – no knock on Georgia Tech. But the thing we have to look at here is who's going to throw the ball? I mean, we're going to run, but the Big Ten is not built for a running quarterback. Never was. So, probably 20 years ago or 15 years ago, but this day and age, there's no running quarterback in the Big Ten. And if he get hurt, then who you going to go to? You're going to get another quarterback knocked out. Then you're going to be back to Purdy and Logan Smothers if he returns.
Yeah, I mean, it is something you've got to consider is, if you're going to be running the ball heavily, you better have a few options there because like we've said before, we've seen now I'm not as vehement as you that a running quarterback can't work in the Big Ten, but a running quarterback can get beat up in the Big Ten.
That's what I'm saying.
We definitely saw that.
I'm not saying it's not going to work, but let me tell you something. Any given play, a quarterback can get hurt by getting hit by somebody in the Big Ten, just running wise. I mean, even sack wise, we seen with Casey, but now you want to run it. And these are big physical linebackers in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
It ain't no 205-pound linebackers like me in the Big Ten. These guys are 230, 240, and they come with a force of wrecking.
Yeah. You think back to Nebraska's heyday when they're running the option, you knew that your quarterback was going to get hit. So, I mean, maybe you're kind of bringing that mentality back to have enough guys ready to run the offense. I don't think they're going to run the option by any means, but I guess, that's kind of maybe the mindset you kind of got to get yourself in if you're going to get that quarterback ready. Listen, there's no doubt about it. Nebraska with Casey Thompson transferring, it doesn't help your quarterback room. I mean, it was somewhat of a surprise that they were able to have both those guys in there. And I was hoping they would have a summer camp battle. But at the end of the day, if Casey looks at it and says, well, they brought him in, he was able to run the offense in spring, all this. So even if he has a 55% edge and I'm at 45, there's enough places across the country, and we kind of said that with VJ the other day. He was asking who. There's enough places across the country. Casey, a healthy Casey can go in and start right away.
I understand that, but we need a healthy Casey at Nebraska. I understand that what we're trying to do, but oh man, this is just I think this is a step backwards for Nebraska. I just feel that way because you know we got to get the ball rolling. You got 8 years, Matt Rule, and this probably knocked number one down already. So now you got to look at year 7. You know what I'm saying? So it's just I don't feel right about this, but it's not my team. But we need to start winning at the University of Nebraska, and this is probably one of the blows that's gonna. Casey can win 3 games, but we're gonna see how this thing goes, and you just don't give it to a guy who doesn't, if you don't have anybody to battle him.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anybody to push Jeff Sims now. Obviously, Heinrich Harburg and Chubba Purdy, are the remaining backup quarterback options for Nebraska. Obviously, we talked about it. Heinrich wasn't at a spot last year where he could help as a backup. Looks like he's got a ways to go in the spring game. As far as going in there and taking some hits, he could probably do that. But as far as the passing game goes, Purdy, do you think he's made that big of a jump? I mean, he scrambled pretty well again in the spring game, but didn't look like he necessarily took that next step. Maybe he does. But it's I mean, you're right. I mean, you're probably looking at this season, especially if they're going to run the quarterback, whether it be a few possessions, whether it be a game or two, whether it be a long-term thing, where you might have a quarterback get dinged up. Heck, Jeff Sims got dinged up last year at Georgia Tech. That's why I didn't play in too many games.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you rather throw some guys with no experience out there, with no experience playing in whatever situation, to this.
Yeah.
Now look.
When it's interesting, do you add a quarter? Like, okay, we talk about Logan Smothers, maybe trying to gain him back, but there's other quarterbacks out there. Do you add a quarterback now? I mean, 3. You went from having 6 to 3. 6 a big quarterback room. 3 is kind of that's a thin quarterback room. So how quickly things can kind of change, or maybe you stick with 3. But again, with those options, what Matt Rule, part of what he needed to do was come in here, address the team's issues, and recruit in a way, and part of it is using the transfer portal in a way to put the Band-Aid on, so you can not step from a complete rebuild, just take your steps and use what you can to take off where the place that you got it, which is a team that was at least good enough to beat Iowa. And a big part of that, again, was addressing a glaring hole at the backup quarterback position. He did for a while, but now you're kind of right back to, it's got to be a major cause of concern if you're a Nebraska fan until one of those backup quarterbacks prove it. And then the other thing is, like you're saying, with Jeff Sims, he's got some proving to do himself. I mean, he's solid, and Casey was kind of in this camp as well, I suppose. But they're kind of up and down quarterbacks, so it's frustrating, but again, I don't think that it was something that was unforeseen. I would said it earlier this week. There's a chance Casey. I'm not going to say I called it or anything, but I said there's a chance Casey leaves the port just because it makes sense.
Yeah,
so
I understand that, but it just baffles me to see how Nebraska, we shoot our own self in the foot. You know what I'm saying? That's what I think, because you got to let these 2 guys battle for it. You got to let. You just can't let a guy come in here and you give it to him like that. That's not competition. Even though Casey was hurt, you give the guy an opportunity in the fall to go for it. We just seen him throwing the other day. Best arm on the team. Now, 6153. Read it, Bob. I don't even read it. I'm gonna think about my response to
it. He said Casey didn't even run and he was injured anyway.
No, top one.
Yeah, that was 606153. You want Huffy?
No, I want the 6153.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Casey was a 25-year-old quarterback. Chubba was a redshirt freshman, so it's stupid to compare the two. Chubba's going to be better than what he showed last year, and Smothers wasn't even given the chance to throw. So how do you know he can't throw?
Well, first of all, Chubba probably been in college 4 years already. when he was at Florida State. What year was that?
Yeah, I
2000,
mean, I can look up. Probably
2020.
is.
Guy been in football 3 years, probably his whole life. You see the Michigan game last year? Huh? That's proof.
Yeah. I
What
mean,
else?
he's 21 years old now.
Oh, he's
But I
21
mean,
year old redshirt freshman. That doesn't sound right. That
It's
doesn't sound right.
a different day of
I
college
was a 21-year-old senior.
Yeah.
So you tell me what's the difference between a 21-year-old redshirt freshman and I'm a 21-year-old senior? That the math doesn't add up.
Yeah. Well, and you know, obviously the offensive line problems that Nebraska has too factored into Casey getting beat up. And has that been addressed? You know,
He been beat up because of a poor offensive line play.
Right.
Casey didn't beat himself up. The team got him beat up.
yeah.
You
But
know,
I mean,
this guy went out here and gave everything he got to this university. And the next thing, you know, I understand football very well, but I don't understand this move.
yeah. I mean, and for what it's worth for Casey, I hope he finds somewhere with a good offensive line. My God, the guy transferred to Texas, or you know, played at Texas and Nebraska, and those are some two, you know, historically great places to go to. But he's getting beat up his whole career, so maybe the first thing he looks for when he transfers is a veteran offensive line or an offensive line that protected the quarterback at least last year. We'll see. It'll be interesting where he goes.